Sorry, there's no music.
How do we know when to start? 2, 1.
Mayor?
Well, welcome everyone to City Council for June 23rd, 2020. I will call the meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the emergency directives from Governor Sisolak, beginning with 006, extended by 016, 018, and 021. I also want to make folks aware that we have had some technical problems reported earlier today. If you should lose the live stream of this, you may want to refresh your browser or simply close it and go to the live stream link again. Again, we have had some interruptions in service. We will, again, not be having any of our local ministers or priests here this evening due to the restrictions for the pandemic. But again, I would ask everyone to please give a thought for all of those who've been suffering not only directly from the pandemic, but also from loss of employment, loss of business, all of those things that many of us have had to be dealing with. And with that, we will move to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and to begin our meeting today, we have a oath of office to be administered to Cynthia Garcia. Judge Miller, I understand you'll be doing the swearing in.
And if you want to come here, and then I'll get picked up by the mic there. If you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Cindy Garcia, do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada against all enemies, whether domestic or foreign, and that I will bear true faith, allegiance, and loyalty to the same. Any ordinance, resolution, or law of any state notwithstanding, that I will perform well and faithfully all the duties of Court Administrator of Boulder City, Nevada, on which I'm about to enter. So help me God. Under the pains and penalties of perjury. This 23rd day of June. 2020. Congratulations. Mayor and members of the City Council, I'd like to present our new court administrator over at the Boulder City Municipal Court, Cindy Garcia.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. And we have several members of the family. The youngest one is also providing his approval, so.
Is that your baby? That's my niece's.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, as I had mentioned earlier, we have had a couple of technical difficulties reported earlier today with the internet access. So if we do lose the video feed, you may want to refresh your browser or simply close it and reopen it and go back to the live stream link. We also are having the public begin to join back in our meetings. So we're currently moving some folks out and we'll be moving others in. Are we moving other members in? There we go.
Yes.
Sorry. And this one's for you. And then city clerk. Yeah. City clerk's right there.
That's fine. You can, let's just let her go give it to the.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you so much.
She's just serving. Thank you. Yeah, maybe.
All right, we have the members of the public then that had either RSVP'd or are here this evening. We also will be doing public comment via phone-in, but we are at the point now where I will open public comment. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda. Each speaker will have up to 5 minutes to speak. Please be civil and concise in your remarks. Is there anyone wishing to speak in public comment? Mr. Martin,
Yeah, I'll start.
please state your name.
My name is Robert Martin. I live in Boulder City. I have been a resident of Nevada since 1964. I'm also a licensed attorney in Nevada, and I am deeply disturbed by the city's conduct with regard to me.
Let me fix the mic for you. Okay, then you can stand in front of me. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the good news, I'm more than 6 feet, so for the moment, that's better. So I am deeply disturbed by the way I've been treated by the city of Boulder City. Oddly, during my pseudo arrest, the police actually were very cordial and friendly, and I have no concern with them. But I have a great deal of concern with both that guy, your city attorney, that guy, your city manager, and a guy named Brock Armentrout, because I believe each of them have acted illegally. And the lawsuit I'm about to file is going to go through why item 9 should never be on the agenda, why all of this stuff should have been resolved years ago. And what I would like you guys to do for a minute, this item is section 14 of the ground lease. What it specifically says, I would ask you to review. It's a very simple, very direct language, which Mr. Morris, the city attorney, ignored. Yet he directed the police to threaten me with arrest, even though I absolutely had the legal right to do what I did. So I find this whole thing deeply, deeply offensive. I've never been arrested in my life. And I own lots of stuff in Boulder City and other places, and I've never, ever had a problem. And this is a sad commentary. So, to those of you that have had a chance to read this already, what it says simply is, if the city doesn't like what I'm doing, they can cancel the ground lease early. That's their right. They had the right to do that. What they don't have the right to do is call the police on me and threaten me with arrest. That isn't possible because this is a civil situation. And I remember the sergeant when that Saturday morning when the 5 of them escorted me off the property saying, "Sir, we don't see any illegal action here, but we have a memo from the chief of police, from the city attorney, saying I have to do this." So I felt very badly for the police in this circumstance because it never, ever, ever should have happened. It's deeply, deeply disappointing. I don't know, I think mainly, even you, Mayor, I think were misinformed. I don't know if I want to use the word lied to, but certainly misinformed. This is section 14 of the ground lease. This is the operative language during the ground lease. Until the ground lease is over, and yes, there is a reversion clause at the end of it, but this is what it says. And section 14 is very, very, very clear that I can do whatever I want. It doesn't matter whether it's intentional, it's an act of God, it's a windstorm, anything. It just says if the city doesn't like what you're doing to your hangar, we have the right to give you 30 days notice, and if you don't correct whatever we view as wrong, then we get to terminate the lease early. And they get whatever's left. That was always the whole point of that lease. And by the way, that lease was primarily there to allow anyone, and more importantly the city and the staff, and by direction the FAA, to allow that there be an extension or additional conditions or terms. This language could never be in there if what you've told the public is correct, Mayor, because this clearly shows that there could not be, in any event, what was done to me and what is possible. I do find this whole comment sad, and I do wish I didn't need to be here. But this is section 14 of the ground lease. Section 14 of the ground lease absolutely says if we don't like what's going on, we can cancel the ground lease, and then we get whatever's left. And that's what didn't happen here. You guys called the police on me because I said, if you guys don't renew the ground lease, I will start disassembling the hangar because I have the legal right to do so. Yet that's not what happened here. And in closing, what I would say is the following. Among other things, may I please get my hangar doors back from the city, which they stole. And I did try to file a police report on that, and that wasn't allowed. So my hangar doors are actually some kind of piece of property of the city, even though they're my personal property. Truly, this is deeply disappointing, to put it mildly.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in public comment who's present here this evening? Ms. Newby? Again, please state your name for the record.
Good evening, Sharon Newby. And I also have a public comment on agenda number 9, and we've heard lots of both sides of it. I do think it's unfortunate also, I agree with Mr. Martin on one point, that it's come to this conflict that we have here. And it is disappointing that it came down to this and that it came down to this council, because it has gone on for years and years. But as I was going through the whole thing, I found this letter to Mr. Williamson from the Federal Aviation Administration. And I was reading through, and it has a lot of grant this and grant that and all this stuff. But I came to this one paragraph that really struck me. And I'm just going to read it to you so it'll be in the record. A typical airport ground lease for an airport property usually includes a term ranging from 20 to 30 years, allowing a tenant to construct improvements to the land, like a hangar, an apron, or other additions to airport infrastructure, to amortize their investment. If the executed agreement between the parties involved includes a reversion clause, once the investment has been amortized and the lease ended, the airport obligated land, along with the improvements, must revert back to the airport in accordance with the terms and conditions of the ground lease agreement. So, I don't know what you have a very difficult thing to handle here. And unfortunately, it's come down to you folks, who I think are all good people and have really looked into this and have worked really hard on this for months and months and months. And I just hope that some agreement can be made that at least somebody is happy about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I believe that's all the members of the public present. Do we have anyone on the phone? Please go ahead.
Hello, public comment.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. For the record, Fred Volz. The following feedback applies to tonight's agenda items 8 through 10. The May 2020 Strategic Plan Implementation Action Plan has several missing elements on page 341 of the support materials. To accurately update the capital improvement plan, we must know how much money remains from prior projects that were canceled, came in under budget, or never happened for some other reason. Why wasn't the reconciliation of over $20 million of such projects added as one of the strategic task updates? These funds collected from utility ratepayers need to be properly accounted for, and the city manager has had a year to fix the problem. Ignoring the lingering problem will not make it go away. In a corollary issue, tomorrow night's Utility Advisory Committee support materials show that there have been no adjustments in the $9.95 million of projections for fiscal 2021's utility and likely other city CIP projects to reflect the 6-month moratorium on new projects approved by City Council. In addition, utility project spreadsheets have been publicly distributed for over a year, yet the projects list has been mysteriously scrubbed of the plus $20 million in unaccounted for monies. When will the reconciliation be completed? For agenda item 9, this item may be deferred because of the looming court case brought by some airport users who don't want to pay market rates, arguably filing the court case as a stall tactic. It is worth saying that if it is not in writing and agreed to by all parties, it doesn't exist for purposes of a clearly enforceable contract. Oral contracts exist, but courts frown on enforcing them because it becomes a he said, she said situation that is hard, if not impossible, to prove and arbitrate. July 2nd is looming, and if we have no closure on this issue, everyone involved is placed in an uncertain situation. It is long past time that airport hangar lessees pay a market rental rate to the city after 30 years of sweetheart deals. The city airport is a business. It has a long list of unfunded capital projects users want, but current revenue levels will not support. Less than 2 cents per square foot per month bears no relation to today's realities. The appraiser's proposed rates are almost 1/3 the cost of what someone would pay for hangar space at the next closest airport, Henderson Executive. So BC's airport lessees still have a tremendous financial deal versus their nearest alternative. I would suggest one further tweak in the proposed contract's paragraph 15. A number of emotional comments previously made by existing tenants and hangar owners indicated they would be removing public property from the hangars if they didn't receive the deal they wanted from the city. This type of anticipatory contract breach suggests that airport staff should be inspecting the hangars on a specific schedule, perhaps monthly, to ensure that tenants are not destroying or diminishing the value of the public's property. As for agenda item 10, it is the kind of indulgent thinking enabling government entities of all types to spend to the maximum level in good times, then having inadequate savings and reserves for the inevitable lean times, such as the one all Nevadans are currently facing. Given the small size of the Boulder City Fire Department, the city's administrative services director claims the fire chief is so busy he cannot handle day-to-day operations. How many fires or EMT service calls does the department handle in a week or month? For 18 firefighters and fire engineers, we have 4 fire captains. Why can't the captains intermittently or in rotation pinch hit for the chief? The chief needs to figure out a more cost-effective solution to his management problems than hiring yet another manager, particularly at a time when city revenue projections are heading substantially down. Private businesses and households have had to adjust to virus realities by doing more with less. Why shouldn't the same standard apply to Boulder City's fire department? This hiring request exception should be summarily rejected, and I would ask that all my comments be added verbatim to the record for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. The line is now available if there is anyone who would like to call. The phone number to call is 702-589-9629. Again, anyone wishing to speak in the initial public comment period, the phone number is 702-589-9629.
Public comment.
Hi, this is Cammie Perkins with Howard & Howard.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make public comment, actually just addressing the previous 3 public comments. First of all, addressing Mr. Martin's comments. I represent several hangar owners, as I think most of the council knows, and certainly the city knows. Now we've been forced to file legal action. And just for the record, while we are amicable with Mr. Martin, we have strenuously tried to have our own legal contract with the city and tried to essentially disassociate ourselves with Mr. Martin in order to get an extension of our leases. Again, not to discredit Mr. Martin's cause, but we do not want to be associated with Mr. Martin on the particular issue of disassembling the hangar and want to state that for the record. As for the caller who called, the woman who called about the letter issued by the FAA, the paragraph that she read regarding reversion, the issue is that the FAA was not provided with all the information, and the question posed to them was very narrowly tailored. I have personally spoken with the FAA and the person who authored that letter, who has informed me they're happy to review any lease presented, including the lease that the hangar owners want to present, which is a ground lease, and which a hangar owner has attempted to present, but which was rejected by, I understand, city staff. The FAA is willing to review any lease and comment regarding whether it believes it violates any grant assurances. So the city council should not be worried about violating grant assurances. It should utilize the FAA and present any lease that it's considering to the FAA, no matter what that lease is. I would highly suggest that. Regarding the last caller who called in, I have no idea where he is getting his numbers from. All of the hangar owners have consistently maintained that they're willing to pay fair market value rent and actually double that or beyond that. They are willing to pay any amount of money that makes sense. So his comments sounded like they were written directly by the city manager and simply didn't make sense. They were just simply incorrect. Those are all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. The line is now available. If anyone else would like to call for public comment, the phone number is 702-589-9629. The first public comment period is available. The phone number is 702-589-9629. Again, anyone wishing to speak in the first public comment period, the phone number is 702-589-9629. right, hearing no others, we will close public comment, and do you have some to read? Go ahead, please. People may have submitted comments via email, and the Madam City Clerk will now read those into the record. Thank you.
This is from David Anderson regarding item number 11. I respectfully request your consideration for appointing me as a volunteer member of the Historic Preservation Committee. I moved to Boulder City 3 years ago along with my wife Sylvia. We bought a house on Denver Street, which I have since learned was built in 1931 and was originally occupied by D.S. Walker, a field engineer for the Bureau of Reclamation. His name is inscribed with many others on the brass plaque at Hoover Dam. I have studied the history of the town and I enjoy its unique story. I'm retired from my career as an assistant county attorney for Clackamas County, Oregon, so I have time to serve on the committee. Please excuse my non-appearance at your city council meeting as I will be out of town until mid-September. I am also a volunteer for the Nevada Site Stewardship Program and the Boulder podcast. Thank you for your consideration. David Anderson. The next one, I'll put the timer on. It's quite lengthy, so I'll get through as much as I can. This is from Edward Knapp regarding item 9. Thank you, Roger Gross. I read with respect your article in the Boulder City Review dated June 10th, 2020. Being from an aviation family myself, I appreciate your opinions on the airport leases. It is well written and seems to incorporate the feelings of some of the folks in our community. Unfortunately, as is often the case in such matters, you had to ignore the primary facts of the disagreement, which are the leases, in order to make impassioned arguments on why the city should not enforce its rights under the expiring leases at Boulder City Municipal Airport. If you had included the contractual terms of the leases in your article, none of the arguments you subsequently made would have any meaning. Let me explain. A group of people here in Boulder City, under the auspices of our duly elected city council, decided to fund the building of the airport and adjoining land for the betterment of the entire community. Since no private money was available for such a large and long undertaking, taxpayer dollars, the government, shouldered these expenses. As an inducement to attract businesses necessary for the operation of an airport, the taxpayers agreed to subsidize leases at well below market rents for a very long time. This would allow small businesses to open up with much less hard capital than is normally needed. Jobs were created, capital improvements added, capital expenditures were undertaken for aircrafts and facilities. A win-win for both the lenders of the money, taxpayers, and the small businesses starting out. This is a very common commercial real estate technique throughout American capitalism. The businesses open up with less capital at extremely low rent, are able to build their business and turn a profit for perhaps decades. The lenders, landlords, take a below rate of return for decades, but get the property back after a specified period of time, including all property improvements made by the tenants. Chain restaurants use this technique all the time. Low capital, great profits, and when the lease terminates, the owner gets the land and the improvements to offset the lower rate of return on the ground lease for all those years. The tenant makes enough money to offset the cost of the improvements and even gets to write it off against taxes owed. These are the incentives for both parties in a ground lease with reversion, meaning the improvements go to the landlord. This is the type of lease we have here at the airport. Further, the FAA demands the city take back the property at the end of the lease. All of it in writing. It is very common for municipalities to own one of the 19,000 general aviation airports in our country. Imagine, Mr. Gross, if you personally held the landlord's position, you would most certainly enforce the termination of the lease and would be fending off articles like the one you just cleverly wrote. We can assume the leases were signed by all parties without undue duress and included a clause calling for quick claims back to the landlord, which is the city, to be signed within 60 days of termination to make it clear that reversion was a contractual obligation. To my knowledge, none of this has ever been disputed. But now a list of arguments not pertinent to the terms of the lease are being bandied about. They all have a commonality as follows. 1, ignore the law and also a solid, transparent, commonly used lease and reversion entered into good faith by all parties. 2, a rejection of paying back the landlord, taxpayer funds, or other consideration, the improvements due for the risk of financing the airport project over a 30-year period. 3, insistent that despite using taxpayer money to ensure profit, profit should go to private business or individuals and not to the city for the future improvement of the airport facility now and in the future. Politicizing the disagreement as if it were a liberal or conservative issue, Democrat versus Republican issue, when it is simply a very common business issue with an easily enforceable contract. There is an existing valid lease coming to termination, but now one side simply doesn't like the terms they agreed to and operated under for over 30 years. They want to bite the hand that feeds them, stiff the taxpayers, and disregard the law. It's really quite that simple. We will probably see lawsuits with no merit, eating up taxpayer and private citizen funds alike. But if you would take the time to read the publicly available lease, it will become apparent it is fair, enforceable, and not the least bit ambiguous. Please join me in supporting our City Council and all taxpayers in receiving their fair, agreed-upon share of this lease for the future benefit of our airport and our continued support of small businesses throughout our community, and oppose those that advocate the rejection of law and order, legal contracts, and self-aggrandizement. Sincerely, Ed Knapp. And that's the only 2 for the first public comment.
Thank you. All right. Again, we will close public comment then and move to approval of the regular agenda. Any changes, Madam City Clerk?
No changes, Mayor.
Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I recommend the removal of regular agenda item number 9. That recommendation is based upon the receipt of a temporary restraining order and an amended temporary restraining order that were properly executed by Judge Nancy Alf in Department 27. That restraining order would enjoin the city from considering item number 9 on tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
No additional changes.
All right, bring it back to council. Any other changes? Okay. I'm requesting item number 4 be removed from the regular agenda. And I will make a motion then to approve the regular agenda with the changes requested.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes the regular agenda. We'll move to the approval of the consent agenda. Madam City Clerk, any changes?
Yes, Mayor, with respect to item number 1, there were some changes that were sent out to you and in front of you on the dais. So I'm asking those be approved as amended. And also, staff is requesting the removal of item number 2, please.
All right, and item number 1 is the minutes from our June 9th meeting.
That's correct.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
No further changes.
And Mr. City Attorney?
No further changes.
Thank you. Bring that back to council. Any additional changes?
No further changes.
All right, I'll entertain a motion then for approval with the changes, amending item number 1 and removing item number 2.
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda with said changes.
I will second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. We'll then move to item number 5, introduction of Bill 1879. Anyone wishing to introduce that bill?
I'd like to introduce Bill number 1879, waive the reading except for the title.
Bill number 1879, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City, Nevada, to amend Title VII, Chapter 1 of the City Code General Offenses by adding a new Section 21, urinating, defecating in public prohibited, Bill 1879 will be considered at the July 14th, 2020 regular meeting.
Thank you. Item number 6, introduction of Bill 1880. Councilmember Hoskins?
I move to introduce.
Motion's
I'm
not
sorry.
required.
I'm sorry. Introduce Bill 1880, waive reading except for title.
Bill number 1880, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City, Nevada, to delete Title 7, Chapter 1, Section 8 of the City Code, indecent, obscene language, for the purpose of removing an outdated and unconstitutional section of the code. Bill number 1880 will also be considered at the July 14th, 2020 regular City Council meeting.
Thank you. Item number 7, introduction of Bill 1881.
Mayor, I'd like to introduce Bill number 1881 with the title, waive the reading.
Thank you.
I left that one out of my notes. I have to go to my computer.
It's the building code.
Bill number 1881, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City, Nevada, to amend Title 5 of the City Code to adopt various building codes and the 2020 Administrative Building Code. Bill number 1881 will also be considered at the July 14th, 2020 regular City Council meeting.
Thank you. That will bring us to item number 8, an update of the strategic plan implementation. We have
Good
Mr.
evening,
Bolt.
Mayor and Council. I'm Lisa LaPlante. Actually, I didn't change that part of the script. I'm sorry. I'm Bryce Bolt, Administrative Services Director for this, and Lisa LaPlante's unable to be here tonight, and I'm giving the Strategic Plan 2025 update. And this is the 5th update the staff has provided since the plan was implemented in February 2019. The plan is a roadmap to accomplishing items to be the best Boulder City we can be. Lisa definitely wrote this. This is a plan that can change when conditions change. I should mention that since we are still waiting to learn the full impact of the pandemic on the community, we could see changes in the coming year. So you can see there are 5, let me make sure I'm on the right one. So as you can see, there are 5 overreaching goals on the 41 strategies that were set. We're approximately 25% of the way done, and while the pandemic could have an impact on some of the strategies, we continue to move forward as best we can. Let's take a look at the first, achieve prudent financial stewardship. Strategy 1 is balance the budget. As you recall, the Finance Department did have a tentative budget filed with the state in April. I should point out that the wonderful job staff did in assessing potential budget impacts of COVID-19 are tightening our belts. Final budget and the CIP were approved in May and filed a final budget and CIP on June 1st. We did meet strategy 1, but obviously this is going to be a strategy that we have to meet every year of the strategic plan. Strategy 6, establish a rolling 5-year financial plan. Staff presented that in April. Just like the first strategy, it is an ongoing strategy. Invest in infrastructure. Good. Strategy 1, prioritize capital improvement plan projects to address health and safety while maximizing available funds. The action steps include enhanced CIP prioritization process and validate priorities annually. This quarter, Public Works utilized payment evaluations to prioritize street maintenance in the 2021 RTC funding. They also utilized the Santac study to formalize maintenance plans and prioritize CIP projects. And Strategy 5, update budget forecasting. The rate study for utilities is almost complete, and they will be utilizing that study to update budget forecasts in the future. Manage growth and development. Strategy 10 is promote to promote the integration of city resources, including the airport, golf courses, railroad pass, Lake Mead, and other regional assets. We are tasked to identify opportunities to bring visitors to historic downtown. Recently, we created a partnership with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority for future NCAA collegiate championships at golf courses. We've hosted a few NCAA tournaments in the past. The relationship could help bring even more visitors to Boulder City. We're participating in the LVCVA Youth Working Group, and staff are working with the Chamber to explore ways that a visitor center can promote historic downtown. Promote historic preservation. Strategy 3 is explores adding new historic preservation districts. The Janus survey was done in March and presented to the Historic Preservation Committee in May by Northwind. The staff continues to leverage the CLG status to seek additional grant opportunities with SHPO. And the final goal, sustaining a high level of public safety services. Strategy 5, identify and embrace the latest technology to improve effectiveness and efficiency of public safety services. The fire department staff are working with the police department communications center staff in identifying appropriate CAD record management systems that work together. Over at the police department, strategy 7, promote interagency support and collaboration. We've had a number of interagency support efforts and investigations, including working with the Fusion Center on rumor management regarding a protest in Boulder City and a news release regarding the arrest of 13 people involved in a theft ring here in Boulder City, which ties to neighboring communities. As a reminder, the update action plan is posted on the website. And with that, are there any questions?
Questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you. I know this might not necessarily be your wheelhouse, Mr. Bolt, but are you able to give a little bit more detail on the Northwind report that was provided to the Historic Preservation Committee in May?
No. Perhaps Mr. Mays is in the building and he might be able to shed some light on that. I'm sure he will. And after the minute-and-a-half delay, he'll come and talk to us.
I will say I appreciate all the work that staff has been doing towards implementing these strategies. It's obviously, it's an ongoing project, but it's something that we obviously need to make sure we take care of. So,
I would agree in that oftentimes these strategic plans are developed and then really put on the shelf, as Mr. Noyella pointed out when we started this process. But this activity in and of itself, when Ms. LaPlante goes out and asks for updates, in and of itself makes sure that we're continuously looking at that plan.
didn't mean to catch you off guard here, Mr. Mays.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Michael Mays, your Community Development Director. Regarding Northwind's survey, they conducted the survey in March and presented preliminary findings to the Historic Preservation Committee last month. They hope to complete the survey results, which will be an update to the 1983 Janus report, which will identify contributing and non-contributing properties to the historic district. Their results should be complete by September. Any other questions?
And as far as you know, as what they have presented and what they have done in the preliminary, have they made any, said as how, I guess, so one of the concerns I have heard, right, is that you want to have a certain number of contributing properties in order to keep a neighborhood historic or still designated, and that whether or not that inventory is, if we are meeting that goal or not. Did they say whether or not we are reaching that, or if we might be falling short of that designated number? I think it's 51% perhaps.
Correct. 50% is the target. And their preliminary analysis indicates that since the 1983 Janus survey was conducted, because of criteria changes, because of the analysis done by the Janus survey, that they are seeing a reduction in the number of contributing properties within the district. However, their caveat was they still had additional research to do. That research has been hindered by the COVID-19 crisis, and so that's why they need additional time to be able to conduct that research, and we'll be able to provide the updates to the committee and the community within the next couple of months.
And then I guess on that line, obviously, probably I don't think any of us have the answers, but I think we were just starting the town meetings, town halls regarding historic preservation with our other contracted group. Has there been any talk of how we might start to try and look back at that at this time, or is it still too early? I think I know the answer, but I figured I might as well ask the question.
No, it's a good question, and I've been in discussions with the Nevada Preservation Foundation to look for ways how we can engage the community in a way that allows everyone to be able to participate and provide input in the historic plan process. Nevada Preservation Foundation has been looking at alternative ways to accomplish that.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. First of all, I don't understand contributing properties. What is the meaning of that concept?
So to make a determination as to whether property contributes to the historic district or doesn't, there are several factors. You're looking at the time frame of when the district is created and the history of that time period. You're looking at how the structures have been modified over time. Are they original to that time period, or have there been significant modifications? If there's been significant modifications, then they no longer contribute to the district.
Is there a percentage of modification that determines whether they're contributing or not? You know, if they're 50% different or 10% different?
Not a set number for changes, but it's one of the things that Northwind is evaluating. They look at the Janus survey, the pictures of the properties of that time, additional historical data on the original structures to make a determination of whether it is a contributing structure or not.
Okay. Actually, I don't think the other question I had was probably less specific and had to do with the Stantec study. If in terms of the historic preservation strategy, has it offered any benefit? I mean, has there been, I know we discontinued it in terms of receiving a final report, but what was received up to this time, has that helped at all or been beneficial in terms of the historic preservation?
I think from the standpoint of the analysis done by Stantec of our city-owned properties that have historical significance, that is data that can be used in the future in the assessment and maintenance of those buildings.
Okay, thank you.
As long as we're on that subject, I know from listening to the Preservation Committee meeting, something that also may have been missing from the original Janus nomination, and the reason it's called Janus is?
That was the company that conducted the survey in 1983.
So at some point, we probably ought to stop saying that and just say the original nomination for the historic district. But that report also, while it certainly made mention of how Boulder City was created by the federal government, there really isn't an awful lot in there regarding the centralized planning for the city, how those structures are still in place. So I certainly hope that that becomes part of the analysis that Northwind is doing, I believe that, probably the most expert member of that committee came forth with several recommendations that were not included in the original nomination, but as you mentioned, standards change over time, and they now do become factors in analyzing what the district should be evaluated based on.
And certainly Northwind, besides providing the survey results, will be providing recommendations in how the city can proceed in that regard.
All right, thank you. As anyone else on that particular subject? Okay, we may then be able to release you back to whatever you were doing when we interrupted you.
At my desk, but,
All right.
But thank you.
And again, thank you for that information. I just wanted to make kind of a general comment about the strategic plan. Again, I do appreciate the fact that we do get these regular updates. One thing that wasn't in the plan was that there would be a worldwide pandemic. So that clearly has changed an awful lot about this. We've had one look at our budget coming into this year. We have a new council. This is a 5-year plan. At some point, and I don't foresee it being necessary in the very near future, but as a council, I believe we're going to need to take a look at the strategic plan and decide what to do, because although it's a 5-year plan, it really intended to be a rolling 5-year plan. So if there are changes that we feel are appropriate, we will be taking a look at those in the future. Again, I appreciate all that staff does as far as getting this information prepared and making sure that we're taking a look at it too, and not just letting it sit on the shelf as the city manager had indicated often happens. So again, appreciate all the work staff is doing. All right, we'll move to item number 10.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's Bryce Bolt, Administrative Services Director. You have before you tonight for possible action is the approval or the request to continue funding for the Deputy Fire Chief position. This position is funded in the next budget, but part of the city manager's administrative policy is that any positions that are vacant would first come to, it'd first go to the Critical Review Committee, the city manager, and then city council for continued funding in the filling of the position. And I can answer hopefully any questions they have.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilmember Adams?
I guess I was just hoping to get a little bit more information about the duties of the deputy fire chief, just to kind of.
Absolutely. I think the best one to answer that might be the fire chief.
He's here. So, in addition to covering in my absence, which the way the model's set up here, most cities have a chief officer that responds to all the calls that's on duty. In this model, we don't have that. So that requires, right now, it requires me to have my radio on all the time. So if I leave town, there's nobody to come to respond to that call. If I'm on vacation, there's no one. If I'm sick, there's no one to respond to take command. Sometimes we talk about the fire captain being able to take command, but the reality is the fire captain is responsible to be on the hose line inside the fire. And so now he has to split his two duties, which is not safe to do. And so if he's not going inside, then we're going to send somebody with less experience inside that doesn't understand how to read fire conditions. And so it creates a huge risk to those firefighters inside. In addition to that, really a lot of the operational stuff, the policies and procedures, works alongside with me with that, some of the personnel issues. Right now we have a consultant that's been helping while we have this vacancy, and I can assure you that the two of us are busy all the time and we're still missing meetings just because there's so much work to be done. There's not enough time in a day to do it all.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? A question that I had, Chief Gray, is you mentioned that there's a consultant right now that is assisting you in duties that would normally be performed by this other position?
Yes, sir.
And how does, I assume there's some agreed upon contract then for payment to this individual?
He was the interim chief. He's just continued, so that he's just continued on with the salary savings that we had from not filling the position previously. So he's just been, because of the recruitment process and the budgeting, we had to get it all changed around the position. The name changed from division chief to deputy chief. It was just to be in line with what's in the valley. It's the same duties. So there were some processes that had to take place during the budget cycle, and so until it got approved in the budget, we weren't able to move forward. So he's been helping in that capacity.
All right, and how does that contract compare to the cost that's budgeted for this position?
They're very similar.
Okay.
So I think the difference is on the contract. There's an administrative fee to a management company that won't be there anymore, and so they'll be offset by that.
All right. Now, you had mentioned that there are 3 captains. Again, my understanding of how the fire department is staffed is you have 3 platoons. They work 24 hours on, another platoon comes in, and the rotation works out so that we always have 24 hours coverage. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they work 48-96. So it's the same amount of hours, but they do 48 hours on and then they have 4 days off. And so there's a station captain that's responsible for the fire engine and the 2 ambulances. So some of when they go on response, he's responsible for daily cleaning the station, things like that. If they have minor issues, taking care of those things, yes.
Okay, and other than, you've got the 3 captains, you have engineers and firefighters. I know that you have staff out there as well, non-fire department or non-firefighting staff. Who else do you have on staff?
So there was 5 positions. In the future budget, the goal was to replace those. Right now, we just have our administrative assistant, or our department secretary, and myself. So positions that were vacated in the past was the division chief, which is we're calling the deputy chief, a captain that was over EMS and some other things, and then another billing person. So all those positions are vacant right now.
Okay. And I know that you've had a lot on your plate, to put it mildly, with this pandemic. My concern is that if we are going to have a hiring freeze, and I believe we must do that, because right now the revenue stream into the city is not known.
Sure.
The legislature actually will be meeting probably within the next 2 weeks, although that's still up in the air. The governor does have a press conference scheduled for tomorrow where he may make that known. We don't know what the legislature is going to be doing either, in ways that may impact the distribution of funds out to the cities. We probably will be waiting another month or 2 before we get a better idea of the type of disbursements that will be coming for taxes like sales tax and room tax, those different types of payments that come in from the state, because all the money goes to the state and then it comes back to the city. So my concern right now is not knowing what our revenue is going to be. The fact that you do have someone in the position right now that is essentially doing the duties that a permanent person would have, I think we need to wait. That's my view of it. I don't think we're talking about never filling the position. I just think that we need to get a better idea here in the next probably 2 to 3 months. I don't see it going beyond 3 months. But we need to have a much better idea what the finances of the city are going to look like. And right now, we really don't have that information.
Part of the concern is I think his contract expires next Tuesday. And so the plan is that he's leaving on the 30th, so there wouldn't be anybody. And the other concern for us is there's a lot of regulatory things that we have to do with to have the EMS transport, to have with our training. When I came in there was a lot of things that hadn't been taken care of for years that we're trying to get fixed, things that create liability for the city that we're trying to remove. Their training program was significantly damaged, from not being done appropriately. That came through in the management partners study as well, things that needed to be fixed. So again, I think it's a critical position. I mean, I feel like we needed it when I showed up. I mean, so we've been doing our best through this. And so like I said, I would plead with you to reconsider, because I think it's a really important thing to have. I mean, and again, and we're still leaving 2 other positions vacant that are important. And so, I mean, we're not by any means, we're not even getting back to even. We're just trying to get enough in place. The other concern is, like I said, is if I'm in the shower and there's a fire call and I don't hear the fire call, there's nobody over there being instant command. So we have to pull that captain off the fire truck, and we don't have anybody inside the fire. So it's really important to have that second person that, like I said, it's that we can have to step into that role. And so.
And I appreciate that, Chief. I honestly do. I don't know whether the person you have currently can extend or not. Obviously, we're paying that person right now. The concern, though, is bringing someone on at this point when there are so many questions about what our revenues are going to look like, and then having to make changes that we may not want to be in a position of having to make those changes. I believe that we need to look at a temporary solution for, as I say, 2 months, probably no longer than 3 months. I understand the position it puts you in, but it sounds like the department has been in that position for quite some time. I don't know that we were ever provided with the management partner's report on this, on the department.
I'm not sure. Like I said,
I don't recall ever receiving it. So that impacts, too, how the view of it is that if we don't understand what those recommendations are and we have to make these decisions on positions, that puts us into a more difficult situation. Councilmember Bridges?
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to go back to the strategic plan in terms of adequately staff our public safety services. And I guess I'm going to take a different stance, that if you're there saying that this is an issue of public safety and that somebody has been doing this job and that they're going to be done next Tuesday, I guess my first question is there a way to continue to contract this job until a decision could be made in order to hire somebody full-time? Or is this just ending?
That we'd have to visit with the individual and see if he's willing to do it. So I don't know. I said, because this was the end, we hadn't planned about what if it doesn't go through, so I would have to visit with them and see, and then visit with the city manager.
So if from probably more of an emotional appeal, would you say that this is an issue of public safety, that there be a second person in command?
100%.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Folda?
Thank you, Mayor. I see the points that both Council Member Bridges and Mayor have made. And as a viewpoint on monetary issues, I did have a concern when I read this agenda item in the packet, because when we approved the budget, we did approve this position, but there are also a couple other positions listed in this budget that weren't two. There's 3 total. So 2 of them were given to us when we approved the budget that we had knowledge of, and then there was a 3rd one that was added sometime between our budget and now. And so I understand where Mayor's coming from, that it's hard to make a decision without seeing the why. We haven't been able to see these studies that have been done and these changes in the organization of the fire department. So I can see from that point of view, it's really hard monetarily to make that decision without seeing why or where or who's what with all these changes that have been done. And there's one position that's been added, or that's planning on being added, and we didn't even see during the budget process. So while I understand we're trying to get everything in order, just from our point of view, we don't see what's happening administratively, and it wasn't presented to us in this packet. On the other hand, though, we have approved this position in the budget already. It's already been tagged for, so I don't see it changing our budget at this time. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, entertain a motion then on this item.
Mayor, I would like to move to continue funding the deputy fire chief position.
I would second.
I don't know that that's the question. I don't know that that's properly worded. We know that the position is funded. It's whether it will be filled.
No, it has to relate to the funding because that is the policy decision of the council. And if you choose not to, then we'd have to bring it back and amend the budget.
All right. Please restate your motion.
I move to continue funding the deputy fire chief position.
And I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I vote nay, so I guess that makes it 4-1. All right, we will move then to, thank you, Chief Gray, I appreciate that. We'll move to item number 11, possible action appointment to the Historic Preservation Committee. Do we have a presentation? Madam City Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. There is a vacancy on the Historic Preservation Committee due to the resignation of Charles Houts in May, leaving an unexpired term that ends August 31st, 2021. So one appointment is needed to fill that vacancy. There were 3 volunteers included in your agenda packet materials. And after the packet was published, we did receive a subsequent application, which was sent to you and is on the dais. So staff is requesting that the City Council appoint 1 member to the HPC to serve the unexpired term ending August 31st, 2020, please.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and open the nominations by nominating Linda Schrick. I've known Mrs. Schrick for several years now. She's a resident in the Historic District. Her home was actually presented with the Historic Preservation Award, I believe 2 years ago. So she is familiar with some of the activities of the committee. Any other names for nomination? Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, I would like to nominate David Anderson.
Thank you. Any other names? All right, we will then begin with all those in favor of Mrs. Schrick for the position. Please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Okay, that's 4. I'm guessing we do not need to proceed then. All right. Thank you. And again, Linda Schrick then would be the nominee for the Historic Preservation Committee.
And Mr. Mayor, I would just like to add that I would like to thank Charlie for all the work that he did on the board. He really was an outstanding member. I understand, everybody has a life to live, and Charlie didn't have the time that he wanted to spend on this anymore. But I think all of the people that applied, I spoke to, and I think they were strong. And I'm really happy that we have so many people looking to volunteer and things like that. And I would ask that they continue to do so.
Absolutely, and I know it was mentioned earlier about Mr. Hans. I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Hans. Actually, I nominated him to be on the committee a year or more ago. He wasn't sure if he would be able to make a contribution to the committee. He certainly did that and more. One of the hardest working individuals I've known, and I certainly appreciate all the work that Mr. Hans did. Councilmember Hopkins?
Yes, I would like to thank him also. He really contributed a lot by just walking around and looking around and had so many different really good ideas that I say thank you, Charlie.
Thank you. All right, we will move then to appointment of the Mayor Pro Tem. Again, Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. Per the Boulder City Charter, Section 7, the Mayor Pro Tem is appointed every year by members of the City Council. So staff is asking that you appoint a Mayor Pro Tem for June 2020 through 2021. As we all know, Councilmember Adams has served as a Mayor Pro Tem for the last year. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I would like to nominate Councilmember Adams to continue in that position. Are there any other names to be nominated for the position? Then by acclamation, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, one more year for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've appreciated the opportunity. I know I haven't had to fulfill the role or the duties too often, but I appreciate the confidence that you have, and I will continue to try and do my best to fulfill that confidence.
Thank you. And again, we're looking at the unknown in this coming year, so. All right, item number 13, City Manager's Report. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and Council, there are no items to report, all routine transactions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? All right, we will move then to our final public comment period. During this portion of public comment, maybe on any item, any issue. The phone number to call into is 702-589-9629. And I know we have a delay, and Madam City Clerk had mentioned that there was a written comment. If you'd like to go ahead with the written comment, please.
Sure, Mayor. I'm going to start the timer on this one too because it is quite lengthy. And get my glasses. This is from Bob Fonstock. He is stating, contained on pages 549 to 551 of the agenda packet is a letter from Michael N. Williams of the Federal Aeronautics Administration to the city airport manager, Willie Williamson. The letter lists a number of grant assurances, which are terms and conditions imposed upon the city due to its acceptance of federal grant monies administered by the FAA. In short, the city is prohibited from engaging in the following practices: economic discrimination in aeronautical activities, including aviation services, Grant Assurance 22, granting exclusive rights to conduct aeronautical activities or be the sole provider of services at the airport, Grant Assurance 23, not maintaining a fee and rental schedule that will make the airport as self-sustaining as possible, Grant Assurance 24. As of this past week, Mr. Williamson took it upon himself to lower the price of the aviation fuel sold by the city at the airport to $2.75 per gallon. Mr. Williamson's stated reason for doing this was to celebrate the airport's birthday. Mr. Williamson said he might continue the celebration for a couple of weeks depending on how things go. Mr. Williamson's actions clearly violate the 3 grant assurances I have listed above. There are only 3 fuel sellers at the airport, the city and 2 private businesses. The $2.75 per gallon price Mr. Williamson has set for the sale of city's fuel is less than what it costs my business and the other fuel vendor to purchase the fuel which we sell. Before we can even consider making a profit, we have to add the expense of liability insurance and other costs involved in meeting the operating requirements imposed upon us by the city. Part of Mr. Williamson's pricing advantage comes from not meeting the same requirements imposed upon the private fuel sellers. The private sellers have operating fire suppression systems in place. Contrary to what former acting fire chief Walton has represented, the city's fuel farm does not even have a fire suppression system operating or otherwise. According to the new fire chief, the Boulder City Fire Department only has the ability to fight a fire involving 10,000 or fewer gallons of fuel. On any given day, the city has at least 3 times that amount of fuel stored at its facility. I can only wonder if the city's liability insurance carrier is aware of the actual conditions and operating practices at the city's fuel farm. All of the equipment operated by the private fuel sellers actually works, while the city has an underground fuel tank to store jet fuel and pumps to dispense it. That portion of its system has not worked in over a year. There is no accurate information available as to the condition of the underground jet fuel tank, the amount of fuel it contains, or whether the fuel is even still fit to sell. Yes, aviation gasoline and jet fuel can and does go bad. When degraded fuel that is no longer fit to sell must be disposed of, it costs considerably more than $2.75 per gallon to get rid of. The impact of Mr. Williamson's birthday fuel pricing scheme upon the airport is threefold. His discriminatory operating practices have inflicted economic injuries upon the 2 private fuel sellers that may well cause us to go out of business. In lowering the price of the city's aviation fuel, Mr. Williamson has siphoned off revenues that would otherwise have been applied to the airport's operations and used them in an attempt to buy acceptance and support for his actions. Finally, Mr. Williamson has placed in jeopardy both the FAA grant monies currently awarded to the city and the city's ability to receive such additional funds in the future. Bob. And that was the only written comment for the last public comment, Mayor.
Thank you. Again, if there is anyone, we have one member of the public here, if she would like to make any comment.
Sorry. Oh, thank you. Sharon Newby. And mine will be short, kind of short. It is a time of upheaval and uncertainty. The COVID-19 has changed our lives, and I was really excited to be here tonight. I don't know why I'm the only one. And BC has pulled together to take care of our residents with many things done by Michael Mays and Senior Center and Emergency Aid. I think we've just really done a wonderful job so far, and it sounds like we're going to have to keep doing that. But I find that some people have short memories. 5 years ago, I moved to BC. I didn't want to move to a small town. I had already lived in a small town. I wanted to be where I could go to the mall and go to the movies. But my husband had other ideas. He'd been here since '79. And then I heard some BC history, and I got really interested in the historic preservation. But then there were some troubling things about the animal control. The town's residents helplessly watched the historic hospital be sold and torn down. 2 people ran for city council and were elected. There were meetings. More people came out to support historic preservation and to never let something like the hospital being torn down happen again. Then electric rates started to go up. There were consultant fees paid then and still for studies, and there was talk of a complex being built down on the I-11, which would have had unknown consequences for our small town. A group also wanted to, or seemed to want do away with the growth ordinance. 2 young mothers started a group to learn more about things going on in town and give residents information. I went and learned more. People became informed and involved. A current city council person, frustrated at not being able to get answers, ran for mayor and was elected. A new person was appointed to take that seat. 2 more new people ran for city council and were then elected. And after the death of a city council person, another new person was appointed. So now we have a completely new council with a new slate, we would hope. People want to change, and they got it. Things started to change. The BC Animal Control is now one of the finest in the state. Electric rates increases were stopped, and a utility commission established. The ballot question on the growth ordinance was defeated. BC is now part of SHPO, which I have no idea what that stands for. People question the appointments, but both of these appointed people have community and work experience. They've put in hours upon hours of research on these difficult issues that we are now faced with. People wanted transparency, so all meetings are now on the internet. Difficult times, difficult decisions. I'm very proud of our city council. I have confidence that our city council will fully research these issues and keep asking questions until they get answers. That is what we, the voters, elected them to do. They will make decisions on what they feel is in the best interest of all BC residents, not any particular group. Thank you for all your work that you have put into our town.
Thank you. And by the way, that stands for the State Historic Preservation Office. So. All right. Do we have a caller on the line?
Public comment.
Yes, good evening again for the record, Council Fred Volz. I have a very quick comment to make. The staff report for agenda item 10 tonight lacked important information, such as the consultant deputy fire chief already on duty, his compensation, and the length of the contract, as well as the number of fire personnel, the number of open positions, and the specific reasons or tasks why more management staff were allegedly needed. Why were these essential background facts omitted? Future staff reports need to do a much better job of outlining issues, facts, and decisions made before any given issue is to be deliberated on by City Council, and so the public is able to intelligently comment. And I would ask that my comments be added to the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, the phone line is available if anyone wishes to call in for the final public comment period. The phone number is 702-589-9629. Final public comment period is available. The phone number is 702-589-9629.
Public comment. Hello?
Hello. Public comment, please.
Go ahead.
All right. This is Judy DeShane. I just wanted to add my voice to Mr. Volz's comments. It's kind of a repeat of what I said last meeting, that the agenda packets always seem to lack a whole lot of pertinent information, and it is difficult for the public sitting out here to be able to know what the hell is going on and why it's going on. It would help a great deal if we got all the information in the packet, because that's all the public has. Thank you.
Thank you. The phone line is available for public comment in our last public comment period. The phone number is 702-589-9629. Anyone wishing to speak in public comment? Again, the phone number is 702-589-9629. Hearing no others, I'll close the public comment period. We'll move to our last item, council reports. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, I participated in a board meeting for the Nevada League of Cities. It was the first one we had held in a while. Not to bore everybody too much with what we discussed, one of the big things was the bylaws. There was potential of changing, going from quarterly meetings to just having the one annual meeting. I guess there was concern in the past that some of these quarterly meetings have not been able to have quorum, so taking action obviously was not a possibility, and so there was concern that it does take a lot to have these meetings. However, a number of members did mention or comment that they do still appreciate having these quarterly meetings, even if there's not a lot of information or a lot of action to take, or even if there's not a quorum, because it still allows for the members to participate in the meeting, get to understand some of the things that are going on. So we are looking at that still. The rest of the bylaws were passed with one other thing. But that was just about it. We did discuss, obviously, the state has been reissuing and distributing relief funds for COVID-19. Obviously, not everybody has been included in that. I don't want to go too far into that, but at this time, while no action was taken, I do have faith that the League of Cities will support some of the cities that maybe are out of that discussion should we need that. As far as the health district goes, I do have a Board of Health meeting on Thursday. It's kind of hard because by the time I get the information on Thursday and by the time we have our next meeting, all of the information has changed and it's all it's all new. So what I will say is obviously cases are on the rise. Fortunately, as of my understanding right now, but these things change. Hospitalizations are not seeing the same trend in increase. However, that doesn't mean we're out of the clear. We have had a couple more cases in Boulder City. We want to be sure that we stay safe. Try and follow these guidelines, because it's not just about our own protection. It's about protecting our neighbors, protecting our community. Obviously, the 4th of July is coming up. There's a lot of unofficial events planned. And so I would just ask that if anybody is planning on attending these two, please consider the health and safety of your community and neighbors while you celebrate our independence. So it's one of those things we all want to be able to celebrate and have a good time. So I would just hope that if you are participating, to just try and recognize, safe distancing, wear a mask when it's appropriate, so that everybody really can enjoy the holiday, because it really is meant for everybody and not just for any one group that wants to celebrate in any particular way. So I just ask that everybody work that to try and keep everybody else in their thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bridges?
Yes, thank you. They was going to talk about staying safe, and however, I am going to talk a minute about the effects of COVID-19 on the economy of Boulder City and the residents of Boulder City. I've been working with emergency aid, and I want to reiterate, as I've said before, there is no reason in Boulder City that anyone should not have food, that anyone who has been affected directly by COVID-19 in terms of their jobs or income should have to worry about being evicted. Emergency aid is sufficiently stocked with food, has grant money available to it to help residents who are directly affected by COVID-19 with rent, mortgage, and utilities. So don't think it's a sign of weakness or worry about your income level at the time. Again, the state, the county have been, and even private organizations have been quite generous in terms of helping nonprofits that deal with homelessness prevention. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Hoskins?
Yes. A few meetings ago, I opposed Bill 1871. And I've been in contact with Mr. Smith, the owner of Boulder City Mortuary. We've spoken on several occasions in the past 2 weeks. He has given me a clearer understanding of his business plans for 1404 Colorado Street. I then contacted the neighbors who had addressed their concerns with me, and we discussed their issues and their misinformation they had received. I'm pleased to report that everyone I spoke with agrees that they could support his request now, that they have a better understanding. Mr. Smith may bring this back to council. However, he is reviewing all of his options. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Folda?
Thank you. This last week, I had my first meeting of the Oversight Panel for School Facilities. Yay! And part of that, the highlight of that was approving a $400 million debt obligation bond. But this is really important because it is a bond that helps the capital improvement plan for new rebuilding and extending of the school facilities for our Clark County children. In the report that we received, we also received the CCSD enrollment projections, which were pretty interesting. Our enrollment as of now is at 323,000 students, and that's for elementary through high school. And this number looks to be projected to be either stagnant or reducing in the next 5 years. The thought on why that was not changing much is because of school choice that looks like, especially in the middle and high school, that magnet schools and charter schools, that people are utilizing other options. And so it looks like as we start kind of leveling out with our enrollment, we had a large, between 2014 and 2017, we were severely under, we didn't have enough schools for, especially our elementary and high school. And so there was a big buildup of those kind of facilities, either adding classrooms or new schools. At this point, we've kind of looks like we've caught up. And so a lot of the money will be utilized to update our schools or add classrooms where they fall short in certain areas. And so we won't have as many new facilities as a brand new facility, but we will be updating and adding additions. I'm not sure how many people in this room have kids in the CCSD school district, but sometimes there can be 35 or more children in a classroom. And so especially with elementary, that's pretty cramped. So having this bonds will help ease some of that crowdedness for our school children. And that's my report.
Thank you. My comments tonight are going to be very similar to Mayor Pro Tem Adams. When we talked, I think it was probably a couple months ago, about the 4th of July, these are events that are sponsored by other organizations, often nonprofits. Discussions had already been held several months ago about the Spring Jamboree and then the Best Damn Barbecue. And now we come to what has always been my favorite celebration here in Boulder City. No offense to Art in the Park, but the 4th of July, I think, has always been, to me, what Boulder City's all about. Folks get out. There are class reunions for the high schools. There are different groups that put entries into the parade. Several years ago, many years ago, we started the water entry portion of the parade. That went downhill a little bit when people thought that frozen water balloons were a good idea. We've convinced people you can still have a lot of fun without hurting each other. So the parade has just gotten to be something that is a tradition here in Boulder City. My understanding, I believe this was to have been our 72nd consecutive 4th of July celebration here in Boulder City. It's not the decision of the city to do these things. The recommendations to these different groups, the Jamboree Committee in this case, is we need to follow the guidance issued by Governor Sisolak. And he's doing that based on the best medical advice he's getting from not just people in the state of Nevada, but at the national level as well. I know, I hear a lot too, people are planning things. Be safe, enjoy the 4th of July. We're not going to be able to enjoy it the way we always have, but it is our nation's birthday. It's a great day here in Boulder City, but be safe with what you do. And on those same lines, when I'm out and around town, I wear my face mask. I think it's important that we do that. It's concerning to me, I don't see people doing that. We are seeing an uptick in the number of cases. That's not just due to more testing being done. It's because more people are getting infected. The hospitalization rates are ticking up. Those are not good signs. The Convention and Visitors Authority just announced that the comeback, the reopening, has gone better than what they had thought. We're getting folks to come back to Las Vegas and enjoy the tourist industry here. If we start seeing that go the way, for instance, Phoenix is going right now, or what's happening in Utah or Florida, people are not going to feel safe coming here. It's our responsibility, I believe it's our responsibility to keep each other safe. Frequent hand washing, wearing a mask or face covering, not being around large groups of people. Those are all things that we can do to keep the spread of the virus down to the lowest level possible. So again, I'm heartbroken about the 4th of July celebration, but once we get out of this thing, we're going to have a heck of a celebration here in Boulder City. I don't know what we'll call it, but we're going to make up for a lot of these events we've been missing out on. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you all.